So maybe we could talk about, a few of the core ideas of Epictetus, maybe.
Yeah, this is great. There's so much, but I'll try to. So there's three that I highlight in some of my writing that I think really separate him from previous Stoics or other Stoics. So first is the dichotomy of control. So, this is the common idea. This is really popular in Stoicism. The way most people get into it is some things are up to you, some things aren't up to you. You should focus on the things up to you.
Yeah.
Previous Stoics had this idea that, virtue was good and everything else wasn't good. But it was Epictetus who hashed this out. It goes, the thing about virtue is that it's the thing that's up to you. It's the thing that's in your control. And he emphasized this aspect of, not only is virtue the only good, but virtue is a thing that's determined by you, controlled by you, your reactions, your decisions. So this idea of making this emphasis between what's up to you and what's not up to you, and using that to focus your attention practically to develop as a Stoic, that's an Epictetus thing. And we can go deeper into these if you want, so I'll just lay some of them out.
Well, I might jump into that if you don't mind, because
great.
It seems to me like he has taken a principle that already existed, and what he's done is he said, here's how you logically break it down that you should only aim at virtue. And I've been thinking about this lately, because virtue is one of those things that you can hit it as many times as you want, but it won't break. Like tell me one thing that is up to you other than your ability to make a virtuous decision and even that is questionable, right? But it's like, it seems like he was just narrowing it down so that you had no choice but to realize, if I aim at anything else, it's going to be fake, right?
Yeah, I mean, anything else is going to be, I don't know if fake, I would say circumstantial, dependent on things, luck.
Yeah.
Right? And he has this argument about God. He said God would not, I mean, you can take this as compelling or not compelling as you want, but the picture was God would not design the world in a way where you could fail if you did everything right. And if we need other things besides character, then you can do everything right and still have a bad life and fail. So this was the picture of these circumstantial things are not the ultimate goods and are not the highest goods. And that's just a way of breaking it down, a way of categorizing it that I think is really appealing to people. It makes it really easy for people to make that divide and focus their attention. And then one thing you said is like up to you, and we've been using that. So the second innovation of Epictetus, if I could segue in, is the proheiresis, which is hieris was like a choice, and then is like pre-choice. So it's like it was your decision to go after something. And we can call that the choosing faculty. So what Epictetus says you are is your proheiresis. So what you are, because you have that question, what's up to you? What's in your control? It depends on what you are. And he says what you are is your choice. What you are is three psychological faculties. The part of you that receives impressions and can reflect upon things, the part of you that makes choices about what you're reflecting upon, and the part of you that then receives a hormone or a physiological response towards the things that you thought were good and away from the things that you thought were bad. That's very important, because the argument falls apart if you take the picture that we are our bodies, or we are, then more things are up to us, or we are our communities, or the consequences of our decisions. There's lots of ways to flesh out identity, but he says, no, you are this very small psychological process. And you can debate that, you can disagree, but that's how we preserve virtue as being the only thing up to us, and not up to anyone else. Because people can provide the impressions, they can provide the information, but all we are is the psychological process that reflects upon it and makes decisions on it, and then feels responses given our decisions about it and our judgments about it.
Yeah. No, this is brilliant. Sorry, go on.
That was an innovation of his as well, because previously the previous Stoics didn't really emphasize what we were in such an essential way, and they didn't relate it to the dichotomy of control. So it's that other aspect of the dichotomy of control, right?
Yeah. No, it's brilliant, because I think what he's done here is and we can talk about who he was influenced the most, but he's obviously taken what he's learned through Musonius Rufus, which was probably his biggest influence, obviously. But I know that he quotes, like Chrysippus and people like that, and Socrates, obviously. But it seems like he's taking these ideas, which we've already been taught by the Stoics, except he's breaking them down super logically for us and saying, well, here's why you are you are you are your choice. And even to say that you are, logos, which is you have the ability of speech and interpretation. And so, which is our biggest gift, and it's also our biggest curse, right? Because it leads us down every wrong direction possible. But if you can learn to perfectly use your ability to use language and your ability to perceive things correctly, then over time you can improve upon your judgments, right? And therefore improve upon your actions.
Yeah. Two other points I want to go through here. Because it's really interesting. So the first is that the difference is that Epictetus was a teacher, right? So Chrysippus was a founder of a school of philosophy. He wasn't writing for normal people. He was writing the truth about the way the world is in its complexity or its confusion. Epictetus is then taking that, and now like what we have is him actually telling that to regular people and actually discussing, which is what makes it so digestible.
Yeah.
And so intuitive. He's just a teacher. The other part we have here, you mentioned logos, your reason, and I think this is really helpful for understanding Stoic psychology. We have this idea of the impression, which is sense information. We reflect upon it, we make a decision, and then we receive an impulse. Or the word there is horme, which is the same root we get for hormones. It means literally like a pulling you in a direction when you view something to be good or bad. And what they thought animals were is they thought animals had two faculties. They had impression, and then they had impulse. So an animal is input output. So you put food in front of an animal, the animal is going to salivate. There's a fire, there's a loud noise, the animal is going to run away. They're just input output. And what you can do with animals, you can train it, but all you're doing when you train it is you're just changing what input corresponds to what output. But there's never any in between. And now, I mean, we have more complex understandings of like animal psychology, but the point was like that is what non-humans can do and like small children can do. And so the gift of humans is we have, as you say, logos, which means we have the ability to represent sense impressions as ideas and as thoughts. And that gives us time to reflect upon them. So instead of immediate input output, we have input, reflection, decision, and then depending on the decision, output. And so that's where the power comes in. And that's where our ability and our strength come in. And so what untrained people are doing is they're acting like animals. They're going around life input output. Something happens and they respond. Not because they don't possess these faculties, but because they don't train them. They don't employ them. And we still do this. Like everyone does this. I do this all the time. But the goal is to minimize this, or at least minimize it in important situations, and make sure that those kind of situations are intentional and careful. Yeah, and I think that's great. I thought I had one more point for that, but
well, let me distract you even further then, because it seems that there's this wonderful kind of competing interest in Stoicism. I see that a lot of them will say, you've got to read these kinds of books and you've got to stick to them, and you've got to like find a teacher who you know is good in character, and you learn from that teacher. You read this, and like there was an emphasis on studying and reading the right things. But then at the same time, there was a focus on, hey, okay, throw away your books for a while. Like if you want to actually get out in the real world and start seeing results, you got to put down the books and you've got to start living your life. Was it almost as if they were saying, listen, at your current state, you're absolutely imperfect and you're aiming at the wrong things and you don't know how to live correctly. But if you come with us, you study for a little bit, then we can release you back into the wild with your same input-output kind of response. But that input-output is actually going to be outputting virtuous decisions as opposed to what your previous decisions were, which was just all over the place, right? And it was kind of like, was it sort of like I'll release you back into the wild now that you've perfected your character and you can be trusted?
Yeah, I think this is a good way of putting it. So the one thing that shuts down this process, in their view, is passions. So if we are incredibly angry or depressed or anxious or lustful or any strong passionate response, it will like impair our ability to engage in this process. So the picture of someone who's untrained is they're walking around constantly in passionate states, right? Because there's so much volatility and strangeness in the world. And even if there isn't, our life's good. You know, we all have great lives compared to Roman slaves, but then we just get stressed about, you know, traffic and other things instead. We just default and we enter into this passionate state. So the first step to an education, Epictetus tells us, is to like stop feeling so intensely about things and to actually like just work on suspending those strong, passionate responses. And the idea of that is when you leave that passionate state and you really take a step back, then you can start to you can start to reflect more and you can start to warm up those muscles of reflection. And then here would be the picture, which is that now you've learned that this faculty exists, you've learned that you have to use it, but that's an applied skill. You can't, you know, obviously they can teach you how to swing the tennis racket, but you have to go out and play a bunch of games and you're going to lose a lot, but you have to cultivate that skill in applied setting. I have all these physical analogies in my head now, but Epictetus talks about this. I think I've probably mentioned this one before with you. It's one of my favorites. He talks about viewing God as a wrestling master, like a wrestling coach. He said, whenever something bad happens, you know, your wrestling coach has just put you against the tough partner who's going to show you where you have to improve. And that's the view when you re-enter. You gain this initial education in Stoicism, and then you go to apply it, and then you view bad things now not as harms to you, but as opportunities or lessons to improve and continue to cultivate your Stoicism.